So, I don't know if anyone's actually going to watch this, but I had this really interesting game and I just felt like doing an analysis. I had run through the analysis on my own and I thought that this game had some very interesting tactical ideas and attacking concepts that I was really proud of. And I just felt like I wanted to run through it. So, I'm pushing 1300 rated. I'm 1292 after this game. I was playing against a guy 1230, playing a lot of 1200 rated games. And let's just begin. I start with d4. I typically like to do a London, and I see this right away, and I'm thinking, okay, King's Indian. Usually people put the knight first, but okay, sure. So I immediately look to put the knight and start to prepare some kind of attack on the king side. He puts the bishop on g7, as expected. Again, typically people like to put the knight first. This is not a threat because I have the queen covered, so I just start taking the center. He puts out this knight, double attacking this pawn, so I decide let's just move out the bishop, defend it. Also, some ideas for the queen and the bishop to team up, and then castle queenside later. He brings out the other knight. Now he's going to be looking to castle. The only inaccuracy of this game, other than this, every move I've played was at the very least good. I thought about attacking this knight, but I felt let's just stick to my idea and what I know. Um, Plus, he could have always just gone here or something. I didn't see it as being too great. I'm sure there's some reasons why it forces him to dance around and it's not that great for him. But anyway, it's fine. So he's looking to do some kind of queenside attack as I'm clearly telegraphing that I want to castle this way. But I'm not too concerned about castling. I'd like to just set up an attack. So he starts attacking, I start attacking, pushing the pawns. Neither side has castled yet. And then he decides to do this fianchetto with the other bishop. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't really care. These pawns are kind of blockading everything. Like it's biting into granite, I believe is a term Gotham Chess used once. This diagonal isn't very good, especially if I do something like this at some point, which I'm actually going to be looking to do shortly. So I decided to just continue this attack. Now, in the past, I've tried to push this first to lock this pawn into place, and then push up this pawn, and I found that the reason that doesn't work, thinking, oh, I don't want him to lock the position if I go here and then he just walks up, um, the reason that doesn't work is because the knight would just come here, and now I'm completely stuck. So I need to get to a position where I go here. If he comes up, I can just take with the bishop. And even if he does some other stuff after he's castled, I can just commit and break this whole thing open. Because when the queen teams up with the rook, everything's going to go to hell. So this is what I've learned to do instead, and I wanted to give it a try here. Now, he does choose to block, but he chose to block all the way instead of coming here. So I said, okay, well, that lets me take this, but I don't really want to deal with these doubled pawns, and then he can bring his rook out. So instead I said, well, you've taken away the spot from your knight, so I can just push this up. Your knight has nowhere to go, right? He has to move the knight back in some capacity, and he does, but this just doesn't seem very good for him. Sure, my attack is kind of halted, but now I'm just controlling so much more space than him. So I said, okay, let's not tunnel vision on this idea of pawn storm and break open the king side. He hasn't even castled yet. He's done some weird stuff to prevent it, so he's creating weaknesses elsewhere. So let's just try something like that. And I said, okay, let's attack this knight. And I have a couple ideas for this. One, this knight also doesn't have a ton of great places to go, and if he has to go back again, that's really ugly. Two, this bishop is terrible and is never doing anything. And three, I have this idea of this bishop to attack this line with the queen defending it, but we'll see that in a bit. So when he moves the knight here, that's when I had this idea. This knight cannot move because if the knight moves, I take the bishop. One idea of the King's Indian is to hold this position and just control the diagonal. But since he hasn't castled yet, the diagonal is not under his control. I can easily take it first. And if you do castle, or you try to just hold the knight here and say, well, what are you going to do? You can't take, or I take back. I'm just going to push this pawn and go here. Note that this is not a threat of a royal fork because the knight is holding. So I said, well, what are you going to do about this? And he decided to go here, which I thought, okay, well, that gives me the diagonal. Of course, he's attacking my queen, but I thought about this and I said, this is just going to work in my favor because I can just take, and he can, and in this position, he can, of course, take back, and we go neutral, but then I take this, and I'm also threatening the rook, and I'm just up. And I said, if he tries to do, something else, like let's say he just wants to castle and make it so I can't do this. Well, okay, then I just retreat the bishop, and I'm totally okay. And if he tries he tries to find a way to equalize. He says, okay, well, now I'm attacking both your bishops at once. I'm going to win one of them, and you do not have this diagonal. If you attack, I attack, and I'm still threatening this. And everything's good. And I'm like, bro, you forgot about the greatest move of all time. En passant. Do you not know about en passant? Oh man, this was a very satisfying en passant. Dude clearly, well, maybe not clearly, but I felt he didn't consider that en passant was an option. And now this position's just terrible for him. I'm up 4 pieces of material, and any way he wins material, I'm just gonna win it back. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention is that if he does attack this way, yeah, I'm not just going to. I get to take back with the queen, and then if you take this, my queen can go and take your rook. So that also doesn't work. He just has no way to not lose material here, and I felt pretty proud of myself for thinking all this through in the middle of the game and finding this kind of pin. And as soon as I saw him go here, I realized and thought this through. How long did I spend on this? Yeah, I spent a good 30 seconds before deciding to commit to this. I felt like it was really good, but after thinking it through, like, oh, can he block it somehow? Can he take? And then I realized this is good, and after this, he just has nothing. So I was very, very proud of this. He opts to just take the bishop. I say that's fine. I take his bishop, and he moves the rook. And here, I decided to be a little bit cheeky. Um, the engine recommends just taking this and getting this, and then his king has to come here. And that's very ugly for him. And that's definitely the best move. But I liked the idea of coming here and immediately attacking his queen. With some funny ideas that if the queen, if the queen's not guarding at any point, this is almost checkmate. He kind of just has to go here. And then, maybe something like this is checkmate. Right? If the queen runs away like this, then this is just mate. Now, I don't expect him to do that, but it was some interesting ideas. And I said that, if he takes this and I take and then he takes, oh, he wins a pawn. But then I go here and, then that happens. And then, we have a game because I can take this. I have some other ideas. I can move the knight in, maybe offering another trade. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So he takes, I take, and I think maybe he's going to take this for the free pawn. One thing I did not consider is that he could take this pawn. I liked the idea of having these pawns threatening. I didn't consider the idea of what if he just takes this one. And that made me a little bit sad because I said, oh, well, now this isn't as strong. I don't have these ideas anymore. So definitely an oversight on my part, but still very strong position for me. So I decide, okay, let's just consolidate this position. This pawn is going to be a thorn in his side, holding these tiles and threatening to come here. So let's just do this and hold this. The diagonal's becoming a little bit more free for the bishop, but this is still defended. So all is good. He then pushes his pawn and makes the diagonal completely useless again. So this man just hates his light tile bishop. He does not like it. So I say, okay, what if I just go here? And I said, if you move the rook to try to threaten it, well, first of all, it doesn't even work because your queen's not holding it. I can just take it. Not to mention, there's ideas like that. Even if you, moved your king up somehow, which you can't. I had some ideas like, oh, well, I could just take this and then this if he does that. Which, now that I think about it, makes no sense because the rook isn't even protected. I didn't really see that in the game, which is really embarrassing, actually. But anyway, the idea here is if he does nothing, I can just walk this queen up, and then this pawn comes forward with a fork, and it's protected from the king. And if he doesn't do, if he moves his king, um, there's also some ideas of this kind of checkmate with the queen. Not here because of this, but if he moved it and then the rook wasn't there, there's just some threats here. Though I guess in hindsight, if he just moves this, I don't really know that I have. No, because I could still just move this pawn up, and you still can't take. And if you move the rook, I just take the rook. Or the rook will get taken by either the pawn or the queen. So I felt like that was very scary. And when I saw this, I said, oh, well, okay, this is perfect because this It seems my headset cut out there. Um, well, what I was saying was, this looks very, very promising because, uh, without the queen there, if I go up, this is just mate. But if this comes, I don't really care about the pawn, but it comes with check. And this just gets very ugly. I don't want his queen coming in while my king is very, very open and not defended. So instead, I decide, okay, let's just protect this. The engine, again, wanting me to just do this and have him take. I didn't really like that idea. I felt like I really wanted to keep this as a threat. Um, of course, this line is now open, but he blocked it himself, so I'm not super worried about it. He pushes his pawn, and I decide to just take it. And I don't remember exactly why, but I had some idea during the game that he couldn't take this safely. Engine says if he does to just move the rook here, but it stops me from castling, which I didn't like. I thought about maybe castling now. I also thought, this was a very solid move on his part, holding this, but I still have a lot of threats here. He ends up doing this, and he played this almost immediately, if I remember, after just a few seconds. So whatever reason I had for thinking he can't take this, uh, I remember thinking it was validated at that point. Though in hindsight, I feel like nothing I do really punishes it that hard, because I don't think I was thinking about rook d1. But anyway, I decide to castle here to ensure that he can't take it, and stop me from castling in the future. And now I have a very safe structure. I'm up material, and his structure is just garbage. So it's just about trying to find a way to close this out. But then he gets to castle, so these ideas of checkmate are just never going to work. But I say that's fine. Let's bring this up, and I have some ideas for this knight, as we'll see in a bit. He pushes this and is like, oh, well, you've gotten pinned. And I said, go for it, dude. Take my rook, because I'm just going to threaten your queen. Notable thing about this knight is that it's also holding both tiles in front of my two passed pawns on the 6th rank. That is incredibly dangerous. So, he moves the rook here, and at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I can take his queen, he can take mine, and then I could maybe move this here, save it, but of course, there's that. Somewhere in my calculation, I kind of forgot about this, which is I'm a little ashamed of, but it still worked out. Because I thought the best way to get advantage out of this would be take the rook, and you can't save your queen now, because then I'm just up a rook. So he takes back, and then I take back, and I said, okay, great, now you've lost a queen and a rook for what's going to be a queen and a knight. Except that he has this. So it's queen and rook for queen and rook, which apparently isn't the best move. I guess because I can take, and even if he takes, sure, he netted some material advantage, but I guess he's just too far gone. But instead I decide I can go here with check, and then this is still a threat. Of course, he can continue to attack my knight. It wanted me to just go here and reinforce these pawns again. But I decided to go here, win this pawn, get these two knights here, and now he can save his bishop. And he threatens my rook. So I say, okay, I'm just going to threaten the bishop back. And this bishop has no good squares, is what I realized. I said, if you go here, I just take. If you go here, I just take and trade and win the pawn, and this is just so powerful. If you go here, then I have this fork, which will net me the bishop in exchange for a knight. So, and I'm totally willing to trade at this point. I just want everything off the board so that these pawns can get more and more powerful. So he goes here, and it says it's the best move as well as this, but I don't really care. Like, what is it looking at? It's not accomplishing anything as far as I'm concerned. So, push this pawn. Now, of course, he can block with the rook is one idea, but if he does that, I can push up the other pawn, and now that's how do you stop both of them? He opts to do the correct thing, in my opinion, and according to the engine, which is to hold with the king. Because now if I go here and he takes, and I don't win the rook because it just becomes a rook trade that also gets rid of one of the pawns. And it's close enough to the other pawn that he'll be able to come stop it. So I moved the knight here, and I had some very clever idea. I had some very nice ideas here. One, I'm holding this pawn so this rook could ever move if it ever needed to. Two, I'm holding this. Three, I'm hitting the bishop. Again. Four, I'm hitting this. And five, I am threatening to go here, hit the rook, and protect the promotion square. If you move the rook to try to get in front, I will just take, and you can blockade with the king, but then I'll get to push the other one. But I'll get more into that in a second, because he goes here, and he threatens the rook. And I have to just take that, because I said, what are you going to do? If you move the rook to try to save it, I still have this. And if you take, now the knight's holding, so I just win the rook for free. I'm also threatening to take the rook if you take my rook, which I do. Because now, what can you do? If you save your bishop like he does, I just go here. And this can't be stopped. You can take this, but you're just not going to make it in time. You don't have your rook anymore. And if you take with the king, which now does let you get here in time, well, we traded rooks, but now you're also going to lose the bishop. And sure, you're in time to stop this pawn, or, I guess you could just wait for it to come up. But, like, you're now in a position where I'm threatening to take this. I just have 2 knights, and you have nothing but a king. You just have nothing. So, maybe not necessarily the fanciest game, because a lot of these endgame positions are only so good for me because I'm already up so much material. But I felt that this was just a really clean conversion with a lot of good attacking ideas to force him to trade down and not let him consolidate and find a counterattack. And also, the middle of this game was just extremely powerful on my part. I found some great tactics in the middle. I was very, very proud of that. So that's about it for this game. It was just a game I was very, very proud of, hoping to push for 1300 soon. Spent a lot of time thinking. I'm always happy when I see a good win with low on time, because it shows that I was really able to make use out of all of the time I was thinking. As they say, the clock is a piece, after all. Sometimes I win games and opponents at like 15 minutes still left on the clock, whereas I'm down to 4 minutes, and it's, well, maybe you should have spent more time thinking. Anything else to say about this game? Not really. If you see any other interesting lines or ideas that I missed, by all means, let me know. But that's about it. I'll see you guys later.